We've had a power cut all morning. It's been an absolute disaster. Luckily, it's back now, which means critically, I can have a coffee, and I better make it right now because I've got to go get Jasper from school. Got to get the house nice and clean because we've got a cleaner coming in. You know how it is. Got to make sure the place is, yeah, not having enough caffeine is a really big problem for me. Should really try not to be so dependent. You do get people who wonder if having an electric car and then also having a power cut is ever a problem. Not in my experience, and I've had an electric car now for 5 years almost, and in that time, not once, not in any way, shape or form have I been inconvenienced by a power cut from a driving point of view. From an editing point of view, that's a different thing altogether. Okay, just about got enough of caffeine in me now to do something constructive. Editing. The house is now getting a thorough clean. I am in need of sorting out the rest of the office. I still haven't quite finished it. I tell you, when the caffeine level is low, I can't get anything done. Anyway, I need to supervise and make sure that Jasper is behaving himself, so we will meet up in just a little bit and talk Nissan. I've always got the feeling that Nissan sees the big picture. I'm not 100% sure that their strategic approach to electric vehicles is the right one, but I do very much appreciate the commitment because it's principally one of the things that most other automakers seem to lack. They all fully subscribe to the torque is cheap mantra, whereas Nissan, they actually seem to try and make something of their electric vehicle plans, and they try and do it profitably, which is somewhat unique compared to other major auto manufacturers. Certainly, whether Tesla is profitable or not is kind of depends on what value you put on their future plans as a potential car purchaser. Certainly Model S and X do make money on a per vehicle basis, but of course Tesla invests a huge amount in other things which just totally eradicate any concept of profit, at least for the time being. Pizza's just about ready for Jazzy now. He was a good boy at school, so as a treat. Speaking of people who do a good job, Carlos Ghosn has been bashing on about the pros of EVs for more or less longer than anyone. And I'm hopeful that they are going to reap the benefits of that first mover advantage. I definitely would like Nissan to not get forgotten, and I don't think they are forgotten. I mean, for me personally, the first place I would look for an EV, if it wasn't going to be a Tesla, would be Nissan, because I've had one of their cars in the past. I was very impressed with the build quality. I was very impressed with the way it drove. It had a nice sort of off-the-line instant acceleration feel. Wasn't so keen on the lack of regen, but hopefully the new Nissan does actually take account of that with its e-pedal. So yeah, in lots of ways, I think it could be a really, really good vehicle. And I really hope that the EV community and the wider car buying public as well give them credit for the early start of their production and EV journey. There are downsides to their ideal of making good profit on every vehicle. I think that's probably the reason why their batteries are not properly thermally managed still, because it's just way cheaper if you don't do that. On the upside, they've built the production line and the capacity and the support experience already, which a lot of EV manufacturers don't have. I mean, I don't know, are there any Nissan dealers that don't sell Nissan Leafs? Probably not. Whereas you go looking for an i3, for example. Right, time to get you to bed, monkey. Come on, off you go. Wait, you missed it. It's this way. Come on. Oh, yeah. I'm going to have to obviously put the camera down so that I can chase him around the kitchen. See you in a minute. Wow, that was tiring. He's got loads of energy, which isn't too much of a surprise because he's had a couple of early nights. Certainly last night he had almost 14 hours sleep. Basically, we've all been a bit under the weather, sort of coldy, throaty, coffee, that sort of not very nice. But we're more or less over it now, hopefully. Also, when I went over to the summer house to pick up the solar generator so that I could at least do a little bit of editing with the power out, it kind of reminded me of how much I've got to do over there. Wow, it's like, need to up my insulating game because it could be quite nice over there, but it's going to take some work. Much like the office, which is also still clearly only half done. It's all about commitment. I suppose actually with YouTube, it is kind of about commitment to some extent in that you have to find the energy. I am trying, I really am. I'm still feeling a bit like I haven't caught up from my lack of caffeine this morning, but I don't want to have any more coffees at this late stage because, you know, the day's almost over and hopefully Soph's going to be back soon. Back to Nissan. At least at the beginning, they didn't really know what their customers wanted. And there were some misunderstandings about that. They seem to have worked out now that people do like to drive decent distances in any car they own. Even, in fact, especially if that car is an EV, which is great because it's meant that over time they have supported things like the electric highway installation of quick chargers around the UK. I do think some sort of a pan-European agreement, I mean, what would be best by a country mile is if all these things just took contactless card payments. That would be the way to do it. You rock up, you flash your card, you plug in, you pay for the electricity you use, you leave. Until we get there, it does help if the manufacturers try and do what they can to ease people's transition into electric vehicles. Because, I mean, that was one of the things that I did get from the Tesla Clubhouse meet in Gaydon. And I've always sort of felt that. It's quite a different vehicle, an electric car. So it does require a little bit more support for people who are new into that scene so that they know about things like different charging networks and different cables that may or may not be useful for them when they go abroad and, you know, things like that. Or bags for your frunk, perhaps, if you have a frunk. But, you know, even if you have a Nissan Leaf, there are still plenty of things that you might want to know about that you otherwise might not have encountered. Something like Leaf Spy might be of interest to some of the more techie Leaf owners out there. Various other upgrades to things like the interior lighting. Obviously, online forums and Facebook groups and stuff have their part to play, but that's not really a replacement for that face-to-face side of things. So it'd be nice if Nissan maybe started doing something along that sort of line. I suppose this is always the problem, though, that companies like Nissan have. Because they sell petrol and diesel cars, it's difficult for them to do a sort of exclusively Nissan EV event or Nissan, Renault and Mitsubishi EV event. Having proper commitment for EVs is always a bit more tricky when you also have got petrol and diesel vehicles that earn you the vast majority of your revenue and profit. And that is one of the massive advantages that Tesla have. You know, their commitment to EVs has never been in doubt because they don't sell any other kind of vehicle. But equally though, with Nissan, their commitment seems to be really quite significant considering that they do make most of their money from non-electric vehicles. Oh, I think that's Soph. My God, she's back so early. It's ridiculous. Right, well, I'm going to say goodbye now so I can devote some proper time to congratulating her on coming back before midnight from work. Yes! I hope you've enjoyed today's vlog post. If you have, remember to like it, share it and subscribe if you haven't already, and follow me on Instagram if you don't already, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next installment of my daily vlog. Bye! That's why I missed a couple of days videos over the last, you know, week is because I'm sort of not really been in a great place for shooting stuff, and I'm getting there now, or at least I would have been if it wasn't for this power cut. Immensely annoying, by the way. Not a big fan of power cuts. Anyway,